Welcome to our series of programs on the Indian economy. Today we are going to be looking at India's GDP in context. We're going to take a contrarian view to see whether the COVID 2.0 wave, the disruptions caused by it, are temporary and what impact it has had on the Indian economy, how quickly we can see a recovery, whether that recovery will be V-shaped, and what is the potential of the Indian economy going forward. Our guests on the program are Dr. Arvind Veermani is chairman of eGrow Foundation and president of the Forum for Strategic Initiative. He has been a former chief economic advisor to the Government of India and a former executive director of the International Monetary Fund. He has advised the government for over 25 years in several senior capacities. His areas of expertise are macroeconomic policy, finance, international trade. He has published several journal articles and book chapters. He did his PhD in economics in 1975 from Harvard University. Professor Sachin Chaturvedi is Director General RIS for Developing Countries. He is a Global Justice Fellow at Macmillan Center for International Affairs at Yale University. He works on issues related to development cooperation, policies, and South-South cooperation. He's a member of the Board of Governors of the Reserve Bank of India and one of the foremost commentators on India's external sector. He has authored and edited more than 20 books. He did his PhD in economics from B.R. Ambedkar University, Agra, and his postdoctorate from Yale University, USA. We know that the economy has contracted, but the point is that the whole world economy has also contracted. And I think one estimate says that worldwide, the economy has contracted by about 5% or even a little more than that. So in this context, how do you view India's GDP numbers?
Overall, India decided in the beginning to impose one of the most severe lockdowns seen anywhere in the country, right, because there was a judgment that it was more important, it was very important given this, our health infrastructure, which is connected to what I said about per capita income, right?
Right.
We are still a lower middle income country, and the health infrastructure corresponds to that. So it was very important in the beginning to have a more severe lockdown than almost anywhere in the world to save lives. But that, of course, took a toll in terms of GDP, etc. And we have learned from that. And in the second wave, this has been more modulated, more carefully focused, more geographical, regional, etc. But nevertheless, we lost, we had a decline in GDP overall in the first year, which is among the worst in the world because of this heavy lockdown, which is minus 7.3%. And we were all primed to recover from it this year, till the second wave hit. Now, I have done extensive analysis, we have done at the eGrow Foundation, extensive analysis of this, and very well before, about a month before, we published a research paper which attributed this to a mutation which did not exist before. So it was unanticipated. It's not just a normal second wave with the same virus because you did X, Y, Z problem things that it revived again. No, it is not that. It is a new mutation which spread like wildfire. And what we showed was that it was more than 1.6%, 60% as transmissible as the earlier variant. So right, this we deducted from just analyzing the data carefully. So, but the key point here is that we showed in that the wave would rise much faster and also decline much faster. So it's the nature of that virus, the mutation, which is now called the Delta variation. So that's the second wave. I mean, I can answer more questions on that, but we also, of course, determined, we did for 21 states, etc., and showed that it would be staggered. It spread in a staggered way, it would decline in a staggered way. And by June end, most of it would be over, on average in India and in most states of the country.
Mark, the recently out World Bank report has suggested 8.3% growth in 2021. We come down to 7% in 2022, and we come down to 6.5% in 2020. And this is largely in terms of how we are looking at a the policy measures that India is focusing on, the rural development dimension, the health issues, and of course the manufacturing and services that we are trying to focus on. So the contraction and the global regime and our own domestic contraction, I think, are important. Reserve Bank of India, as we are watching, is extremely concerned about inflation. And I think the growth pursuits and inflation may pose a major challenge for us. We need to see how we reduce the input costs for our industry and for our agriculture products. And I think there is, some scope for state governments and for central government to reduce taxes on fuels. Now the time has come that the fiscal incentives that have been given to MSME and to big firms, they are leveraged. The additional 50,000 crore lifeline that RBI has given to our health sector, I think should be leveraged. The reverse repo rate at which this has been made available, I think has to be leveraged by industry so that at low cost we are able to bring in not only API production, but also deepen our preparedness for COVID wave 3 through several local productions. Our dependence on China multiplied in last 10 weeks, and I think we need to see what of that can be manufactured and produced internally in India for an important Atmanirbhar Bharat.
We saw in the first wave that there was a V-shaped recovery, and you also mentioned that we were poised to do really well, recover very fast. Then the second wave came. But the point is that if we look at that analogy, in a sense, we can see that we are poised for another V-shaped recovery.
Absolutely.
One can say, because this is pretty temporary, isn't it?
I think the summary you've done, we can go into the details, but you're right, absolutely. The recovery in this case will be even faster than most people are looking at the negative effects. For example, and I can go through all those, savings, consumption, investment, rural versus urban, etc. I disagree with 90% of that analysis because for 2 or 3 underlying reasons. One is that we've learned, business, industry, government, everybody has learned from the first wave how to deal with it. Not that we'll be perfect in the second wave, but we'll be much better. Each of these categories will be much better rather than worse. Okay. The worst part, of course, is clear. This wave was 4 times as bad as the first wave. So yes, there are certain effects which are bad, but everything else in my view is positive, and therefore the recovery will be. And what I have shown in my paper is that there will be an upside surprise in our Q2, which is FY22 Q2. There will be a big upside surprise coming. And of course, by the third quarter, we should be back on that high growth recovery track.
So we need to reduce the input costs. We need to bring fuel prices down, and we need to facilitate movement. Of course, infrastructure is improving. The railways have played an important role in enhancing connectivity. For several of the northeastern states, Udan 1, 2, and 3 were extremely important. And we have tried to bring in Riverine Connect as an important vehicle for our goods movement. We now need to see how firms can take products out of factory to the market in the most competitive manner. And that's where we need to focus on now. And this derailment that has happened with the disruption due to COVID wave 2 would be minimal.
But would you say that we are not short of reserves? We have money, that can be invested. There's a lot of savings that can be converted to investment. Philosophically speaking, also, we've saved so many lives. And that, as a result, is going to boost the economy, if we try and translate it in that sense.
Absolutely right. And several state governments have responded extremely well in minimizing the local impact. And I think this has given new confidence to people. This has given new energy. And the fact that we could minimize the outbreak to a great extent, I think, has given new lease of life to several sectors. And mind it, Mark, that this time lockdown was not so wide. Government of India did not enter into that zone. And as a result, a lot of units could continue producing the agriculture because this was the key season where the crops were ready to be marketed, and Government of India did everything possible for facilitating a collection through the government procurement. The minimum support prices were announced, and record collections have been made. So I think the impact would be minimal. Now we need to see that the manufacturing sector comes up. The support for the services sector, particularly for tourism and hospitality sector, have already been announced. And I'm sure in weeks to come, we would be back, and by Diwali, we would be really bouncing back, and the predictions are absolutely clear on that front.
Will the reserves be used in this direction?
No, I don't think the reserves are really an issue except of reduction. In fact, I expect reserves to rise. Once the COVID temporary short-term effects are over, this was going to lead to a big boom in economic growth, which is what I said earlier will contribute to the revival of the world. But with this goes an influx of FDI and capital from the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So your reserves are actually going to rise. It's not the question of using them or what, and they are rising because too much money is coming in thing, and we don't. It's not a good thing for the rupee to appreciate and stifle the recovery. Okay, so it's actually an indication of something else. It is not that this old thinking is actually not right. You know, we used to think your reserves go down if you have a large trade surplus and vice versa. Reserves are now driven by capital flows, expectations about growth, stock market, etc. So you should see this, both the stock market and the reserve rise, as global expectations of a sharp recovery in India. That is how you should read it.
But if we look at this Delta strain, it was a highly transmissible strain. And, from the peak in early May, it was brought down within a month. It has been quite an achievement in that context. And India should gain confidence from that, economically speaking as well, because, this is, in a sense, can be a lesson for the economy also to revive the same way.
Absolutely right, Mark. And if you see the trade figures, they are absolutely big promise. Expansion in exports by 47% is something which is absolutely reassuring. We are seeing rising foreign exchange reserve, and imports have also gone up, which is absolutely clear in terms of how the value chains are falling in place. So it's just a matter of time that we are getting back to the pre-COVID situation. The domestic industry is all set, and demand is very much likely to be restored completely.
So speaking specifically, sector-wise, or let's say demand and supply side, if we look at the roadmap for the economy on the demand side, would you think we need certain boosters?
Definitely, and I think, as I said, with 99,000 crores, nearly the contribution that the Reserve Bank of India has already made is something that people are expecting. The multiplier from the Finance Ministry, Prime Minister in his address to the nation has already indicated something is in the offing. So I think that is one area we can certainly expect. Finance Minister herself has indicated in her two press conferences in terms of how some of the new programs would be sort of unfolding in the days to come. So that's one area where boosters are required. Second, I think, is the reassurance that has come from railways in terms of how railway is going to strengthen the linkages that are important. And third dimension, I think, is our trade, and we have already talked about it. It bouncing back. The sectors where we are seeing definitely is largely in terms of manufacturing and health. Both sectors have already got the lease of life through the advanced credit mechanisms that have already been spelled out. We are also trying to see in terms of what kind of a GST streamlining is required. First round of discussions have happened. A small committee of the ministers has already been constituted, and they are trying to see how this can provide the necessary sort of wherewithals for us to see that the adverse impact is minimized.
Right. So one, as I mentioned to you, is public investment is still needed. Okay. But the other two is the one which we haven't mentioned. Because of the stimulus given by the US, the global economy, and especially US, because much of our exports go to the US, that export driver is, I believe, still underappreciated. Okay. People have focused on the fact that, oh, we are still importing a lot from China, or that so is US, etc. What they haven't focused on is there's a gradual diversification of supply chains. I have heard and read about many Indian entrepreneurs who are getting new orders from the US for the first time. Okay.
Yes.
Few of them I've talked to personally, but others I've heard indirectly. So this is happening under the horizon, and also relates to one of your other questions. The PLI scheme, etc. The diversification of supply chains to help Indian industry, etc. All this, is kind of slightly delayed because of the second wave, but you will see this playing an increasing role once the economy starts to recover. So on the demand side, these are some of the issues I mentioned. On the supply or other side, I mentioned the digital economy. I think is going to be a huge driver. But again, it has to be a partnership. Government has to get all the regulatory systems and the tax measures and all which are hindering some of these things. One is sad to hear still some digital companies going abroad to list, etc. Partly because there are certain hindrances. I'm not saying we've done a great job. We've innovated many platforms like UPI, etc. All very good. But what I am talking about, to raise our vision, I think we could be within 2-3 years. This digital economy could be a driver of Indian growth. In 5 years, it could be a driver of global growth. That is the vision which I have, from which I'm talking. I'm not trying to be critical of the government, but there are many things which we could do to achieve that vision.
On the supply side, then, what do you think?
So one of the key
support for MSMEs, GST, these are the areas of consideration.
Excellent. Another excellent question. But briefly mentioned, there are a lot of supply side disruptions because of COVID, shifts in supply demand, supply chains, etc. all over the world, which are manifesting as higher inflation. You must have heard about higher inflation across the world and in India. Now, I believe most of this, perhaps not all, but most of it is a temporary phenomena and will ease out as these supply chain disruptions are removed. But on the other side, MSME, this again, absolutely right. MSME can play a much bigger role, but there is some truth to the thing that, the playing field has become a little less level for MSMEs versus corporations. And there's an easy way to remove, in my view, this level the playing field again is through two measures. One is GST simplification. I recommend, and it's not a difficult reform. If we could make 75% in goods and services, have a single rate of 15%, that would hugely simplify things for MSMEs, hugely. Another is direct tax code. If you look at the direct tax codes, rules, explanations, it is like a thabba, which is this high, probably almost as high as me. So we have a model direct tax code, and if that could be, because the corporate sector is maybe 10%, 90% are self-employed, etc. They are affected by the direct tax code. And again, people don't realize, people think of direct taxes as something you and I, we were salaried employees, affected. But the whole ecosystem, the MSMEs, is affected by that code. So there are these ease of doing business, ease of regulatory compliance, ease of taxation, etc. measures would make life much more easy for MSMEs. And I think they could play a much more modern and driving role in the economy than they have in the recent past.
And we are also seeing in terms of how the challenges which are emanating out of the GST rates, particularly for sectors which are adversely affected, both in terms of demand and also the intermediate inputs that they need, I think requires support, and they require handholding, particularly the IT enabled services and IT related production, electronics basically, because of disruption of the supply chain. So sectors that are adversely affected because of that, I think they need some support by the government.
And finally, about entrepreneurship at a time like this, of course, it really requires those who are brave to come forward and, with new ideas. How would you think that government needs to promote entrepreneurship? I mean, we've had Startup India, we've had Stand Up India, we've had so many other schemes like that, Atmanirbhar Bharat itself. The Prime Minister had the target of $5 trillion economy, that in a way pushed entrepreneurship. That may be set back a little bit, but, can we regain that target soon?
Definitely, Mark. And I think it is important to be mindful of the fact that we have lost around 23% of employment in these months. So we need to see how much we can focus on skills. We have been talking about it. We have made some efforts and some initiatives are already there. Probably much more concerted effort now is required in the post-pandemic phase to see that we impart necessary skills for people, those who have lost out in this phase, to reconnect with the mainstream. And I think skilling would be extremely important for us to see that everyone is part of this growth story. That's the first point that I want to make. The second point is very much in terms of how this growth story also bring in gender balance, and that's where we need to focus on our women colleagues in terms of their skills and their participation in this process. COVID-19 has adversely affected gender engagement in a major way, and that I think would be extremely important.
This is one area that government has clearly from the beginning, I would even say perhaps even before I did, or my research indicated, that they have played this Stand Up India, Startup India, has been given much, much more important than I remember from the last 20 years. Every government has talked about it, entrepreneurship, small entrepreneur, etc. But in my view, this government has done much more in concrete terms for this startup, Stand Up India, and really seems to believe it. Belief of leadership is very important because it permeates into the bureaucracy. So yes, I think if we look forward, we always start small. It's very small. It can't drive the whole economy yet. I mean, you can have 1,000% growth rate and still have a 1% or less effect on the economy. But as that size grows, I have no doubt that let's say in 5 years or 7 years, this whole ecosystem, the startups, the tech part will play a much bigger role in driving the growth of the economy. So this is one thing I would unambiguously praise the government.
So in an analysis, you are saying that the digital economy is really going to be the driver of India's recovery and...
Well, not the immediate recovery. Yes, it's going to contribute to it because animal spirits, right? But you have to be careful.
A lot has happened. A lot has happened. A lot of those changes have happened under COVID. I mean, we've been pushed into the digital revolution in a sense.
So driving in the sense of animal spirits, the actual contribution will be small in the next 3 years till the size expands. So one has to be a little careful because otherwise it's easy for people to criticize me. I'm saying it'll drive it in the sense of driving animal spirits, of giving hope, of bringing in capital, investment, etc. The actual impact in, in hard terms will still be small till the size grows. But 3 to 5 years down the road, even that will become important. Yeah.
So you're pretty sanguine then about the economy, getting back. Would you give a sort of a figure, when we can get into positive territory once again?
Yeah. So I had made, I don't know, 6 months ago, I was the first economist to publicly, in an interview to, I think, Economic Times or something, I had said there would be double-digit growth this year. And in my precise calculations, I had said 10% plus minus 1%.
Okay.
After the COVID wave, I have stuck to my 10%, but I've expanded the range of risk because obviously COVID is a risk. Everybody agrees. So I've made it 10% plus minus 1.5%. But I'm convinced it will be within that range.
And with that, we conclude this episode on India's GDP figures in context. I'd like to thank our guests, Dr. Sachin Chaturvedi and Dr. Arvind Virmani, for their time. And thank you very much for watching. Namaskar.